Years of dreaming and months of planning all came down to this one moment in time. I was sitting on a motorcycle I'd never ridden before in the biggest city in the United States, and I was scared to death. I may have been sitting physically at the intersection of White and Broadway in Lower Manhattan, but at this moment in my life, I was idling at the intersection of inspiration and action. But this isn't where my story begins. I'm going to take you all the way back to 1915, when the Ford Motor Company rolled its 1 millionth Model T off the assembly line, and 25,000 women marched in New York City demanding the right to vote. There was a young woman that lived there. She was a 26-year-old woman. Her name was Effie Hotchkiss. She lived in Brooklyn and worked on Wall Street. And Effie was a very spirited, adventurous young woman who had a dream. She had a dream to go to San Francisco, to get outside of the confines of New York City and to experience the wide open spaces and the green fields of the United States. She wanted to go to San Francisco. Well, unfortunately, Effie didn't own one of those Model Ts, but she did have enough money to buy herself a 1915 Harley-Davidson Greyfellow. And this is how she was going to achieve her dream. Well, after convincing her mother to join her, the mother-daughter duo of Avis and Effie Hotchkiss loaded everything they would need onto the sidecar, and on May 2nd, 1915, were headed for San Francisco. Now, you can imagine that they experienced many setbacks while they were there. Muddy roads, getting lost, countless breakdowns, both the motorcycle and Effie, and Avis nearly setting the motorcycle on fire. Effie also endured societal norms of that day. Think about it. It was 1915. A woman riding a motorcycle across the United States when women couldn't even vote yet? It was scandalous. Nobody believed that she could or she should be taking this trip. Well, Effie's purpose was twofold. She wanted to prove them wrong because that's just the type of girl that Effie was. And she wanted to inspire women to love the sport of motorcycling. Well, I'm happy to tell you that Effie did make it all the way to San Francisco. She fulfilled her purpose. She proved them wrong, and in doing so became the very first woman in history to ride a motorcycle from coast to coast. She went down in the history books, and she inspired women for generations to ride motorcycles, women like me. Because once I heard about Effie's story, I too wanted to ride a motorcycle across the United States. Well, let's speed ahead. Oh, there was our final day. Let's speed ahead to speed ahead to 2014. I left a 20-year career in the financial services industry to start my own business. As many of you know, being an entrepreneur isn't all that it's cracked up to be because I was a horrible boss and an even worse employee. I was feeling hopeless, and I just wanted to give up. Until my friend Clint came along with a much-needed reality check and a kick in the pants. And he said, "What is wrong with you? You need to reconnect to your purpose." Well, Clint was right. So I started to tell him the story about Effie and what she accomplished, and he stopped me mid-sentence, and he said, "Lisa, you need to take that trip." Yes, it was a dream of mine, but in that moment, I was censoring my dream. Physically, I'm not strong enough to do that. How am I going to pay for that? And I'm a wife and a mother. What self-respecting woman goes off gallivanting around the country and leaves her family at home to fend for themselves? Who does that? Can someone bring me some water, please? Who does that? And then my left brain kicked in. This is a logistics nightmare. What if this trip kills me? Literally. There were all these reasons, dare I say excuses, why this would never work. But there was one reason that got me out of my own way and onto a motorcycle, and it's what I call your inner rumble. We all have an inner rumble, this purpose that we were created for. And if we don't do it, our lives are incomplete. My purpose, thank you. My purpose is to dream big and act even bigger and inspire others to do the same. If I didn't complete this trip, my life, my purpose would be unfulfilled. So I said yes to the adventure. First things first, I needed an Avis. So I called my friend Chris, who is the only woman that could handle a motorcycle like I can, and the only woman that could handle me on the road for any length of time. We secured 2 motorcycles from the Harley-Davidson Motor Company. We planned our route as close to Avis and Effie's as we could. We said our tearful goodbyes, and we headed for New York City. On June 5th, 2015, I found myself sitting at the intersection where inspiration and action collided. Because a woman quite like me, 100 years before, had inspired me to turn my inspiration into action. Well, the next 3 weeks were some of the scariest and the most exhilarating days of my life. And I thought often about Effie as we experienced the wheat fields of Kansas, and as we rode through torrential storms in Colorado, and as I knocked a toll booth arm off in Chicago. Yes, that really happened, and no, I don't have a picture of it. And as I witnessed the breathtaking beauty of the Pacific Coast Highway, and as we connected with men and women from across the country who inspired us just as much as we inspired them. Women like Jody, who is a single mom just trying to raise her son right on the streets of Chicago. And women like Annie. Annie has a heart for veterans, and she stands guard against protesters at military funerals. And then dads like Chris, who heard about our story on Facebook, and he wanted his 20-year-old daughter, Simone, to meet us, 2 regular women out there riding motorcycles. Our trip took us about 15 days, 4,690 miles. And by me arriving in San Francisco, I too had fulfilled my purpose. And I learned some things along the way. I learned that you have to create your own opportunities, that they're not just going to find you. And that people are hungry for inspiration. They're looking for something to belong to and something to believe in. And that your purpose is a very powerful motivator. And when you obey your inner rumble, you're being more loyal to your dreams than you are to your fears. These were the most exhilarating days of my life. And because I was there, I was powered by my purpose. But Effie inspired me to do this. But if I didn't have the courage to act upon it, it never would have happened. Life's defining moments don't happen in 15 days, 4,690 miles. Life's defining moments happen when we decide to be powered by our purpose, and we would choose to turn inspiration into action. The way I see it, some of us are content on being on the road of inspiration. We're going to take our idea or our dream, and we're going to think about it. We're going to talk about it with our friends over drinks. We might even put a plan together. But unless we act upon it, we're still on the road of inspiration, right? But I believe that there comes a point in our lives that demands that we take action. That when our inner rumble starts revving its engine, we have no other choice than to kick it into gear, roll on the throttle, despite our fears, despite our excuses, despite any challenges that we're going to face. And we keep going mile after mile after mile. And that, my friends, is when we're on the road to action. Because that is when we are powered by our purpose. Because you're at this session today, I'm I'm going to say that your purpose means something to you, that it's important to you. Either you're clear on your purpose, or maybe not quite yet. Or maybe you're finding your way on how do I live my purpose out in my life. But either way, I've created a resource for you. You can go to fullthrottleliving.com/inbound. And you can download a thought process that I walk my clients through so that they can dig deep and excavate what their purpose is, and then find ways to activate it in their lives to become the leaders worth following. The way I see it, some of you are sitting in an intersection right now. And there's been this rump, rump, rump in your soul, and it is getting too loud to ignore. That your purpose is welling up inside of you, and if you don't do something about it, you're simply going to explode. What is it for you? What is your inner rumble? Maybe you have this great idea that you need just to muster up enough courage to get it out in the world. Or maybe you're ready to step into your leadership purpose and execute on the potential that you know is within inside of you. Whatever it is, it's something you simply must do for yourself, for your family, or for your organization. And as you sit at this intersection, you're faced with a choice. You can either take your dream or your idea and follow it all the way down to the end of your life, never doing anything, staying on the road of inspiration, and then regretting it at the very end. Or you can choose to be inspired by Effie or by me. And you decide to be powered by your purpose. And you say yes to the adventure that life has for you. And if this is you, and I am pretty sure that it is, I want to leave you with the words of Roy T. Bennett. And he said, if you have a strong purpose in life, you don't have to be pushed. Your passion will drive you there. So enough idling already. It's time to turn on your blinker, check your mirrors, roll on the throttle, and confidently merge onto Action Street. Because your road trip starts right here. Thank you.